You've probably heard someone say, I'm so OCD because they like their desk clean, or I'm basically depressed after a bad week. And maybe you've said it too. No judgment, but here's the thing. Mental illness isn't just one thing. It's not a switch that's either on or off. It exists on a spectrum, and most people have no idea how deep that spectrum actually goes. Today we're going to break it down into 7 levels, not to scare you, not to diagnose you, but because understanding this might be the most important thing you learn this year, for yourself or for someone you love. Level 1, Everyday Struggles. Let's start at the very beginning. Level 1 isn't even what most psychiatrists would officially call a mental illness, but it's real, and it affects almost every single person alive. This is your anxiety before a big presentation, your low mood after a breakup, the week where nothing feels right and you can't explain why. Sleep goes off, appetite goes weird. You're snapping at people you love. The American Psychological Association estimates that in any given year, roughly 20% of adults experience what's called subclinical symptoms, meaning real psychological distress that doesn't quite meet the threshold for a diagnosis. Here's what's important to understand. This level is normal. The brain is reacting to life, but ignoring it repeatedly, pushing through every time, never dealing with it, is exactly how people slide deeper into the spectrum. Level 1 is where habits either save you or slowly wreck you. Level 2, mild disorders. Now we cross into clinical territory. This is where a diagnosis becomes possible. Mild generalized anxiety disorder, mild depression, specific phobias, social anxiety that makes certain situations genuinely painful but doesn't stop your life entirely. At this level, people are functioning, going to work, maintaining relationships. But there's this constant low-grade noise in the background, like a radio that never fully turns off. You can live with it, but it costs you energy every single day just to appear normal. What makes level 2 tricky is that people here are masters of hiding it. They've learned to perform, and because they're functioning, nobody, including themselves, takes it seriously enough to get help. Research published in JAMA Psychiatry found that the average delay between first symptoms of a mental illness and first treatment is 11 years. 11 years of suffering quietly because the pain wasn't loud enough for anyone to notice. Level 3, Moderate Disorders. This is where daily life starts to crack. We're talking moderate depression, where getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. Panic disorder, where attacks happen regularly and unpredictably. OCD, where rituals are consuming hours of the day. PTSD that's reshaping how a person sees the entire world. At level 3, functioning is possible, but it's costing everything. Relationships start to strain. Work performance slips. The person knows something is wrong, but often blames themselves for not being stronger. That self-blame is one of the cruelest parts of mental illness. It tells you that you're weak when actually you're fighting something most people can't see. Here's a number worth sitting with. The World Health Organization estimates that depression alone is responsible for over 200 million lost working days globally every year. That's not people being lazy. That's people being genuinely unwell at a level that doesn't always show on the outside. Level 4, Severe Disorders. Level 4 is where the illness starts to take over, rather than just run alongside life. Severe Major Depressive Disorder, severe PTSD, severe eating disorders like anorexia, which has the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric condition. Borderline personality disorder in its more intense presentations. At this level, the brain's ability to regulate emotion is significantly compromised. A small argument can feel like the end of the world. A minor disappointment can trigger a crisis. This isn't drama. This is neurobiology. Brain imaging studies show that in severe depression and BPD, the prefrontal cortex, the part that's supposed to pump the brakes on overwhelming emotions, becomes significantly less active. The brain literally loses access to its own emergency stops. People at level 4 often cycle between periods of relative stability and acute crisis. They might go weeks seeming okay, then fall completely apart. This unpredictability is exhausting, not just for them, but for everyone around them. And it's one of the main reasons relationships at this level become complicated and painful. Level 5, Psychotic Features. Now we move into territory that most people have almost no real understanding of, because what they know comes from movies, and movies get this catastrophically wrong. Level 5 is where reality itself starts to become unreliable. This includes conditions like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and severe bipolar disorder with psychotic episodes. Hallucinations, hearing voices, seeing things, delusions, believing things that aren't true with total unshakable certainty. Here's what people don't understand. The person experiencing psychosis is not being dramatic. They're not making it up. To their brain, the voices are as real as your voice is to you right now. The delusion is as factual to them as gravity is to you. The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that about 3% of the population will experience a psychotic episode at some point in their lives. That's millions of people. The tragedy at level 5 isn't just the illness, it's the stigma. People are feared, mocked, locked away, when what they actually need is early intervention, because the research is clear. Early treatment of psychotic disorders dramatically improves long-term outcomes. The window matters enormously. Level 6. Treatment-resistant conditions. This level doesn't get talked about enough, and that silence is doing real damage. Some people go through every available treatment, medication after medication, therapy approach after therapy approach, and nothing works. Or things work partially for a while, then stop. Treatment-resistant depression affects roughly 30% of people diagnosed with major depression, meaning nearly 1 in 3 people fighting depression will not respond to standard treatment. That's not a failure of willpower. That's the limits of current medicine being honest about itself. At level 6, the illness has become the person's entire life. They're not living around it anymore. Every decision, every day, every relationship is filtered through managing an illness that refuses to be managed. Some people here are surviving on sheer stubbornness because there is nothing left to try and they're still here anyway. This level is where new treatments like ketamine therapy, TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and psilocybin-assisted therapy are showing real promise. Not cures, but doors that didn't exist before. Level 7. Crisis and acute danger. The final level is the one nobody wants to talk about. This is where mental illness becomes life-threatening, either through suicide, through complete psychological collapse, or through the body breaking down from the stress of severe untreated illness. According to the WHO, close to 800,000 people die by suicide every year. For every death, there are roughly 20 attempts. And behind every attempt, there's almost always a long story of pain that escalated through multiple levels before it reached this point. What matters most to understand about level 7 is this: it is rarely sudden. There are almost always signs. People at this level have usually been suffering, often silently, often invisibly, for a very long time. The crisis isn't the beginning. It's the accumulation of everything that never got treated. So why does any of this matter? Because most people only recognize mental illness when it's already at level 5, 6, or 7. When it's loud, when it's impossible to ignore. But the truth is, every level 7 started somewhere around level 1 or 2, in the quiet struggles that everyone told themselves weren't serious enough to address. Understanding this spectrum doesn't make you a doctor, but it makes you someone who can notice, in yourself, in the people you care about. And noticing early, that's not weakness. That's the whole thing. The brain is an organ. It gets sick just like any other part of the body. We don't tell people with broken legs to just push through it. We shouldn't do that here either. If this changed how you see things, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're somewhere on this spectrum right now, which honestly, most of us are, just know that knowing where you are is always the first step out.